brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Trumpet's Call. I'm Maria. I pray that you're blessed today and that you're holding on to faith and holding on to hope. Welcome back to another session of our Torah Tidbit. Today's Torah Tidbit will answer the question, is having long hair against Torah? In a video that I did recently, I mentioned Samson and I mentioned the fact that my sons had started growing their hair out. And so I had more than one question about whether or not it was against Torah to have long hair because of something that the Apostle Shaul mentioned in the epistles. And so I wanted to explore that today. So let's get started. We're going to begin reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 13. Consider for yourselves, is it proper and decent, according to your customs, for a woman to offer prayer to Yahuwah publicly with her head uncovered? Does not the native sense of propriety, experience, common sense, reason itself teach you that for a man to wear long hair is a dishonor, humiliating, and degrading to him? But if a woman has long hair, it is her ornament and glory, for her hair is given to her for a covering. Now, if anyone is disposed to be argumentative and contentious about this, we hold to and recognize no other custom and worship than this, nor do the assemblies of Yahuwah generally. Okay, so this is the verse of scripture that people look to when they assert that a man should not have long hair because I guess it's sin. So we're going to look into this a little bit more. But first of all, I wanted to just make a note about the Apostle Shaul, who is a well-respected brother and apostle and wonderful scholar in the scriptures. And there's much that we've learned from him and through his writings, and so we honor him. But his word does not trump Torah, nor does his word trump Messiah's. And unfortunately, growing up in Christianity, there would be many occasions in which Shaul's writings, when they compared to Messiah, would trump Messiah, or when his words were compared to Torah, would trump Torah, as if in Christianity, Shaul was the Father himself. He's not. He's a servant of the Most High. And so he gives his opinion about things, and he also speaks to things dependent upon the current culture of the time. And so we have to understand that when someone is speaking the Most High's words by commandment, or when they're speaking just based on their experience or based on their opinion. Okay, so let's dig into Torah and see what Torah says about having long hair. Because if having long hair is a sin or against Torah, it will say so in Torah. No new commandments can come from the mouth of man. No new commandment can come from the mouth of man, only from the source of our Torah, which is the Father. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit deeper. We're going to begin reading in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, because in the book of Numbers, we learn about something called the vow of a Nazirite. And so we'll read about that, and then we'll discuss whether or not this is something that the Most High has ordained or something that is wrong. We're going to begin reading in verse 1. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Yasharal. If any of the people, either men or women, take the special vow of a Nazirite, setting themselves apart to Yahuwah in a special way, they must give up wine and other alcoholic drinks. They must not use vinegar made from wine or other alcoholic drinks. They must not drink fresh grape juice, and they must not eat grapes or raisins. As long as they are bound by the Nazirite vow, they are not allowed to eat or drink anything that comes from a grapevine, not even the grape seeds or skins. They must never cut their hair throughout the time of their vow, for they are holy or set apart before the Most High Yah. Until the time of their vow has been fulfilled, they must let their hair grow long, and they must not go near a dead body during the entire period of their vow before the Most High Yah. So the vow of a Nazirite is something that can be taken by a man or a woman equally, in which they agree to allow their hair to grow and they set themselves apart for the Most High's use. And they cannot in any way eat anything that's fermented with vinegar or has wine or alcoholic drinks or anything that has grapes, grape skins, grape seeds, or anything like that in it. Okay. And then during this time, they must allow their hair to grow long. They must allow it to grow long. And so for a woman, it would be her glory. But according to what we read in 1 Corinthians, for the man taking this Nazarite vow, it would be a shame. That doesn't sound right. The Most High would not have his people do anything that would be shameful. So let's read a little further and see what else Torah has to say about this. Continuing. Even if the dead person is their own father, mother, brother, or sister, they must not defile themselves, for the hair on their head is the symbol of their separation to Yahuwah. This requirement applies as long as they are set apart unto Yahuwah. If someone falls dead beside them, the hair they have dedicated will be defiled. They must wait for 7 days, then shave their heads, then they will be cleansed from their defilement. On the 8th day, they must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one of the birds for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way, he will purify them from the guilt they incurred through contact with the dead body. Then they must reaffirm their commitment and let their hair begin to grow again. The days of their vow that were completed before their defilement no longer count. They must rededicate themselves to Yahuwah as a Nazarite for the full term of their vow, and each must bring a 1-year-old male lamb for a guilt offering. This is the ritual law for Nazarites. At the conclusion of their time of separation as Nazarites, they must each go to the entrance of the tabernacle and offer their sacrifices to Yahuwah. A 1-year-old male lamb without defect for burnt offering, a 1-year-old female lamb without defect for sin offering, a ram without defect for a peace offering, a basket of bread made without yeast, cakes of choice flour mixed with olive oil and wafers spread with olive oil, along with their prescribed grain offerings and liquid offerings. The priest will present these offerings before Yahuwah, first the sin offering and the burnt offering, then the ram for a peace offering, along with the basket of bread made without yeast. The priest must also present the prescribed grain offering and liquid offering to Yahuwah. Then the Nazarites will shave their heads at the entrance of the tabernacle. They will take the hair that had been dedicated and place it on the fire beneath the peace offering sacrifice. After the Nazarite's head has been shaved, the priest will take for each of them the boiled shoulder of the ram, and he will take from the basket a cake and a wafer made without yeast. He will put them all into the Nazarite's hands. Then the priest will lift them up as a special offering before the Most High. Okay, so this is what Torah tells us about having long hair in the context of taking a Nazarite vow. Okay, we also know that there are others who had long hair in the scriptures, and there's no mention of that being a sin or being shameful. We know that Absalom, David's son, had long hair, had locks, and when he was riding away from trying to escape being captured, his locks were captured or caught in a tree. He had long hair, and there was no mention of that being a shame or something that should be shameful. Also, Torah tells us about priests and how priests are to conduct themselves regarding their hair. It actually mentions that in Torah. And we see in Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 20, it reads, I'll read in the King James. It says, "Neither shall they shave their heads, nor suffer their locks to grow long. They shall only poll their heads." Okay? In the Berean Study Bible, it says, "They must not shave their heads or let their hair grow long, but must carefully trim their hair." In the English version, it says, "They shall not shave their heads or let their locks grow long. They shall surely trim the hair of their heads." Okay, so these are instructions from the Most High regarding priests and how they're supposed to manage their hair. The Most High does not want them to allow their hair to grow long, but he wants them to keep their locks trimmed. Now, they have locks. Locks are not typically tiny things. They have locks. Now, I understand that the Most High doesn't want them to grow long, that locks are locks of hair. And knowing that these men are going to be Hebrew men, we know what locks look like. I'll place an image of some locks on the screen. We know what they look like. There's hair there. Now, some of them are smaller and some of them are bigger, but as long as you keep them neatly trimmed, and not allow them to get too long, it's not in any way breaking the Most High's commandments to have long hair. So I'm not sure where the Apostle Shaul is getting this, that it's a shameful thing, unless he's getting it from culture. The way this is worded it's as if he's indicating that this is something that's cultural. And if it's cultural, then that makes sense. Okay? And also it should be noted that in this verse of scripture, the Apostle Paul is not at all giving any kind of commandment regarding long hair on a man. He's talking about a woman having her hair covered or having her head covered when she's praying. That is what the tenor of this verse is about. A woman having her head covered while she's praying. Okay? And then he makes reference to a man having long hair and how that is dishonoring. Okay? So let's see if we can figure out where this is coming from, because clearly it's not coming from Torah. So where could it be coming from? So we read at this article at easyhairpro.com. It gives a little background information about ancient Rome. It says, in the beginnings of ancient Rome, it was normal for men to wear their hair long. But as time went on, Julius Caesar inspired men to wear their hair short to battle and to keep it short. Many neighboring nations were inspired by this change, meant to give enemies less to grab during the battle. This look was all over southern Europe for a number of years, but went out again during the Dark Ages of Europe. So there was a time during the time of Julius Caesar that having short hair was fashionable, and it became a part of the culture. So my thought on this, and I don't speak by commandment, these are just my thoughts. My thought on this is that it was culturally relevant to have shorter hair. It was fashionable and it was dignified to have short hair. And anyone who had long hair was breaking the societal norms and the societal mores at that time. And so he was looked down upon, and it was a shameful act to do that which was against the current culture. And let us also remember, the Apostle Paul was a Roman citizen. He was Roman. Okay, he grew up in Tarsus, a Roman province, and so he would have lived and abided by at least some of the Roman customs of the time. So it makes sense that he would draw the conclusion that having long hair would be shameful if he grew up in a culture in which short hair was something that was considered decent and in order. Okay? So those are my opinions about that. But let's look further into the scriptures and see if we can find any indication about the Apostle Shaul's real feeling about long hair. So let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 18. And we're going to just read one verse, verse 18. And it reads, Paul stayed for a while longer and then told the brothers and sisters goodbye and sailed for Syria. And he was accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. At Cenchrea, the southern port of Corinth, he had his hair cut because he was keeping a Nazirite vow of abstention. So we see here in the scriptures that the Apostle Shaul was keeping a Nazirite vow. He had made a vow. It's something that you can do for a particular purpose. Let's go to a commentary on this subject. We read here on BibleHub.com, for he had a vow, speaking of the Apostle Shaul. A vow is a solemn promise made to Yahuwah respecting anything. The use of vows is observable throughout the scripture. Jacob, going to Mesopotamia, vowed 1/10 of his estate and promised to offer it at Bethel in honor of Yahuwah. Moses made many regulations in regard to vows. A man might devote himself or his children to Yahuwah. He might devote any part of his time or property to his service. The vow they were required sacredly to observe, except in certain specified cases. They were permitted to redeem what had thus been devoted. The most remarkable vow among the Jews was that of the Nazirite, by which a man made a solemn promise to Yahuwah to abstain from wine and from all intoxicating liquors, to let the hair grow, not to enter any house polluted by having a dead body in it, or to attend any funeral. This vow generally lasted 8 days, sometimes a month, sometimes during a definite period fixed by themselves, and sometimes during their whole lives. When the vow expired, the priest made an offering of a he-lamb for a burnt offering, a she-lamb for expiatory sacrifice, and a ram for a peace offering. The priest then, or some other person, shaved the head of the Nazarite at the door of the tabernacle and burnt the hair on the fire of the altar. Those who made the vow out of Palestine, who could not come to the temple when the vow was expired, contented themselves with observing the abstinence required by the law and by cutting off the hair where there were. This I suppose to have been the case with Shaul. Paul, his hair he cut off at the expiration of the vow at Caesarea, though he delayed to perfect the vow by the proper ceremonies until he reached Jerusalem. Why Paul or Shaul made this vow, or on what occasion, the sacred historian has not informed us, and conjecture perhaps is useless. We may observe, however, that it was common for Jews to make such vows to Yahuwah as an expression of gratitude or of devotedness to his service when they had been raised up from sickness or delivered from danger or calamity. Vows of this nature were also made by Gentiles on occasions of deliverance from any signal calamity. It is possible that Paul, Shaul, may have made such a vow in consequence of signal deliverance from some of the numerous perils to which he was exposed. Okay, we'll stop there. We see here in this passage that it's very likely that the Apostle Shaul made a Nazarite vow for a particular purpose, perhaps a thanksgiving vow for being saved out of danger, or just perhaps he wanted to set himself apart before the Most High. But he made a Nazarite vow, and in it, he allowed his hair to grow. And the text here, in another commentary, seemed to indicate that he let his hair grow for a year and a half. And then at Caesarea, he cut his hair and then ended his vow. So the Apostle Shaul, in this Nazarite vow, allowed his hair to grow. When he did that, was he being defiled? Was it shameful for him to do so? I don't think so, or he wouldn't have done it. So clearly we indicate through Scripture that having long hair is not against Torah. It's not breaking Torah. There's nothing in Torah that indicates that having long hair is shameful or sinful in any way. It's not written in the text. It's not. Now, there are cultural considerations that are probably written into the text, and that is how we have come to this conclusion that somehow for a man to have long hair, it is sinful. So these are my observations based on the text. I am in no way indicating what is lawful or unlawful, but I'm looking at the text and I'm saying there's nothing in the text that says that having long hair on a man is against Torah. So, as with anything, you take these things before the Most High and you consider them for yourself and see what the Most High says to you. I pray the Most High bless and keep you, brothers and sisters. I pray that he makes his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. I pray that he will lift up his countenance upon you and grant you peace. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining me once again on the channel for another session of our Torah Tidbit. Be blessed, brothers and sisters. Shalom and shalom.